Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. I have an exciting guest here today, and we're going to be talking about a topic that's pretty relevant to a lot of our, global world. And so I'm excited to welcome Jenna Bayuk. Jenna, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we're excited, and I'm looking forward to getting into our conversation. And I want to thank our audience for joining in today. I know it's hard sometimes to fit in all the things we want to accomplish. And, one of those, of course, is listening to the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. So I just want to tell you, I'm grateful that you do take that time and you're listening to the conversations we have with amazing women in particular, but also sometimes we let men come in. So thank you for tuning in to us today. So Jenna, let me just share a little bit with the audience about who you are, and then we're going to jump into questions. Okay.
Perfect.
So Jenna is the founder of Kinship Kollective, and that's a business supportive service where she has over 15 years of experience from business development, marketing, events, to talent acquisition and operations. She has invaluable experience and knowledge that has gathered whilst she's been working with these multiple fast-paced, fast-growth tech startups across the globe. And so Kinship Kollective is really about how do we take that missing piece to the puzzle and bring the execution focused around the heart, right? And I love what I read about you and how being human-centered is so important in our approach, and cannot agree with you more. And so I just want to share a little bit. So the business world is about competition and scalability and automation, which is happening so fast, it's hard to keep up. But when we're focused on facts and figures, are they missing out on businesses' best kept secrets? So execution-focused consulting helps entrepreneurs in three key business areas: their people, their operations, and community. And execution-focused consulting with heart goes beyond these areas and connects with business owners to help them bring their vision to life. I wanted to share that. I know that's kind of your pitch on how you would pitch a company, but I thought that was really important to share because so often we lose sight of that human element, and that is becoming even more pronounced with AI and all the innovation that's happening. And I think there's, somebody asked me last week, they said, Vicki, what are your thoughts on AI? And, I have mixed feelings. I think there's good things as long as we're really paying attention to the impact that it can have. And, what ethics are we putting in place to ensure that, we're protecting the people? So ultimately, that's what it comes down to. So before we get into all that stuff, let's just talk a little bit about who you are, Jenna. Give us a little, just a view into the life of Jenna and what's led you to where you are today, and then how Collective Kinship has come to life.
Yeah, absolutely. It has been a very non-traditional journey, I think, because I've gotten to work in so many different places and countries and meeting people who speak 5 languages, went to Ivy League schools, have all these degrees. Initially, I was like a deer in the headlights of, oh my goodness, like I'm not smart enough. What am I doing here? All these people are so exciting and so smart, and they've done so much. I must not be able to contribute like much to this conversation or anything like that. So a bit of that imposter syndrome for sure, but it kind of starts from being really always ambitious from like a teenager on. I remember having a conversation with my parents. I'm like, well, I need to increase my allowance. And they're like, that's nice. We're not going to give you any more. So I'm like, fine, I'm going to go get a job. And they're like, okay, like, see you later. So when I got my first job in a restaurant, and then that kind of ticked off, like, okay, I started to realize I had a gift with people. I was able to connect with people easy. I was able to learn quickly, adapt to situations. In hindsight, I see it now. At the time, I didn't realize it. Then I went to school thinking I was going to go be a criminal lawyer or a paralegal because I wanted to defend people who had like wrongdoings. And that kind of came from experiences of being bullied really badly in high school and like always kind of rooting for the underdog and wanting to protect people. And then I remember it so specifically, my corporate law teacher said, law firms had moved away from a team dynamic, that it was very individual work. It wasn't about collaboration. And it was a very solo journey. And I started to cry in class, and I picked up my books and I walked out and I called my mom and said, I'm so sorry. I know you helped me with school, but I can't do this. This is not for me. I can tell you right away. So I stopped. I went full time at my job at Earl's Restaurant and became a night leader and managed, a team of, I think we had like about 50. I got all these cool responsibilities, and then realized, okay, I don't really want to work nights for the rest of my life. This is not fun. And it started to cause a journey of like, well, what do I want to do? So I got a diploma in event management. I went into events and did those for like 50 to 2,000 people. And then it switched to people telling me I should work for entrepreneurs. And if I chose that right, I would learn a lot and get kind of access to worlds I might not otherwise have because of this kind of non-traditional path. And that's exactly what happened. I started to work for entrepreneurs that were visionary, who had growth-focused companies, who moved super fast. And I was able to travel in Europe, London, all across the US, work in Canada, and get an experience that I don't think many people get access to in terms of responsibilities. I had many moments where I said, I have no business doing this or taking this on. This is way out of my depth, but I'm going to figure out how to make it happen. And through that journey, I kind of realized that was sort of my superpower, being able to translate those big, lofty visions into bite-sized pieces that people could digest. I have a very strong connection to entrepreneurs and that big vision and the power it takes to commit to something that big and the resiliency that you need to build in order to make that happen after constantly getting knocked back.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. That's a lot. Like I love so many things that you said. I mean, because you talked about that fear of not being smart enough, but, feeling like everybody else in the room was, just so much more advanced. And so that comparison came in, a little bit of imposter complex. But what I love most of all of what you've shared is that did not hold you back. You took that and said, okay, so I know this is the situation. What do I do with it? And that's such an important moment in life because we do have a choice, right? We have a choice. You could have just decided, okay, I give up. I'm not going to do this, which sometimes happens, right? Yeah. But instead you said, nope, let's tap into how do I grow from this? What can I learn? And so now you have Kinship Kollective.
Yeah.
And so talk to us a little bit about what prompted you really to start that, and, who are the people that you work with, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I kind of hit my fork in the road. I could go left or I could go right. Left was what I was doing. I was successful. I was working across, 3 entrepreneurs companies. I was making great money, but the outcome of if I committed to that choice for the long term was working 24/7, zero control over my schedule and over my life. And I'd already had a couple burnouts and was able to recover and reset from those and kind of reestablish, my energy around making things happen. But I had to be okay with that was the choice. So there was limited time for family and friends. And was that what I really wanted? Paired with the challenge that I was getting every day to kind of go better, get better, go faster. Or the option 2 was resign and figure out what I wanted to do. So I had kind of my head-to-head moment with that entrepreneur, and I left that day. I, again, bawled my eyes out on my way home. And I was like, I think I just have to resign. This isn't what I want. I don't know what it is, but I have to make a choice. So I took that summer off. I was training to be a spin instructor, which I still do on the side for fun. And I woke up probably almost 2 months later, and I was really clear. I was like, okay, Kinship is definitely the name. What do I want to do? I want to take everything that I've done and leverage it in a way that makes sense for entrepreneurs. So how can I take everything I've learned, all the roles that I've had, and customize it in a way that adds impact and meaning for an entrepreneur in their business? And what ended up happening and it was like only a few months before COVID that this all came to be, was the disruption in the talent force, the disruption in the way that companies function and work. And what I was doing, and I don't think I was as aware of it as I am now, is giving them a path of resources that they're able to scale up and scale down as they grow. Mm-hmm. And having that superpower that I call, like, it's not tangible. It isn't a KPI metric on a dashboard of, she gets me, she like translates my crazy in a way that makes sense, but that is it. And so it's being able to really partner with them and be that trusted resource that they can call on anytime. I have super clear boundaries. All my like entrepreneurs I work with are super values aligned, and I have control of who I work with and take on, which is really important. So for me, it's not necessarily the industry. I would say like heavy manufacturing or something is probably going to not be my area of fun space, or I'd say I'm not going to get as excited about it. So I'm not going to be a great fit for you. But the main criteria I look for is, can I get just as excited about your vision as you are? And then, do we have values alignment? And then what are those growth pain points, and how can I make that better or take them off your plate so that you can focus on the things that make you magic? Nice. And that's where it goes. So I've worked with the solopreneurs up to like serial founder entrepreneurs, everything in between. But for me, it's that beginning criteria that is really important.
Nice. And so what I heard you say, not so much about what you do with Kinship Kollective, but more about who you are as a person in being true to your values, making sure that you're staying very aware of how it impacts you on a physical, emotional, mental level, which to me, that is so important. And we were talking just before we started recording about, that self-development and the importance of doing that work for yourself. So when you were saying that earlier, you were like, okay, no, that's not fun for me. So I want to do this. And that's really important, right? Because we spend a lot of time at work. And so finding your niche, finding your niche, however, whatever way you say it, that's really important. And doing more of the things that you love, because that fuels you as an individual, and that helps you to engage even more when you're at that, level of service that you're looking to do.
For sure. And I think it's important that it takes sometimes a long time to figure out what you don't like doing. Yeah. And it did take a while, and I took on everything. And I remember hating projects that I got given or working through things because they were really challenging. And some of those things now are things I love to do, but in the moment when you just feel like there's nothing you can do right, and like, why are they forcing me to do this? And why am I given this? You kind of move forward. And I know that I'm built differently than other people. Like, working with visionary entrepreneurs is not for the faint of heart.
No,
I love to work. I get a lot of purpose out of it, but I don't mind working long hours. But what I realize is that when it didn't work, it's because the values alignment wasn't there, and how they wanted to execute through their people, with their people, how they treat. That was the factor where I said, okay, this is now my boundary, my line. And I can work with chaos and emotional, all of the things. And I, was able to do the personal work to understand, where do I thrive in chaos and pressure, and in a work setting, but also where has it happened in my personal life?
Sure.
You kind of keep that balance, and where you have to kind of let go of certain things and put in boundaries of where this is healthy chaos, and then this is not healthy chaos.
Yeah. And it's, again, such an important message, for the audience, because we all get into those places, right, where it can be personal or professional. And there should be not balance as in 50-50, but, when you're out of alignment in what you go in to do every single day, that has a huge impact on us personally, and those that are in our circle, right? Because they can feel it, they sense it.
Yeah. And a lot of people miss kind of the crossover or how they're behaving in work because of what's going on at home.
Oh,
and I think that if you're not, if you don't have what I always call, it's like some entrepreneurs, I always say, well, who's your quarterback? Like, so they always have their team, but like, some of them have a business coach, some of them have a life coach, some of them have a therapist, some of them have like a team of 5 people they go to. And I think the biggest misconception is like, no one has it figured out. Like, we're all changing and evolving, and we all need help. We don't have the tools. We weren't born with the tools to figure out how to do it. But if we're committed to getting better and like having really good conversations, then you can start to see the impacts and where there's a lot of personal growth that needs to happen to like accelerate into that next part in your career or in that leadership role.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And something you said there, you reminded me. I remember one time somebody called me and they said, Vicky, I'm thinking about becoming a coach. And I was like, great. And it was so funny. It happened to be a guy, and he goes, yeah, but I don't want to deal with any of that, that life stuff. He goes, I have no interest in that whatsoever. And
Yeah.
I started laughing, and I said, well, that's interesting, because won't you be coaching human beings? And he goes, yeah. And I'm like, well, life happens to human beings. So, like whatever is impacting somebody personally impacts their professional life, to your point, and vice versa. And so, it's being aware of that. But the other thing you just said there, I think is so important. And this applies to, it doesn't matter if you're in corporate, if you're an entrepreneur, but having that support system around you. So knowing what you need, and then helping you to navigate through those bumps and complexities and challenges that that we come up against. Our world moves fast, right? So speaking of that, let's move into a little bit about what's happening in our current economic environment. And I know one of your specialties is really about when people get laid off, and that's happening in droves right now. So what are your thoughts on how could they best approach those layoffs, and who do you see doing it well, and who's not doing it well?
Yeah, I think the rule applies for layoffs. The same thing with when you've had a bad experience. When you have a bad experience, you tell 10 people about it. When you've had a good experience, you keep it to yourself, or you tell one person. So you don't really see companies getting highlighted for like handling layoffs super well or treating their people really well. The things that get the media exposure are the ones where things go really bad and get viral. And there was that one, I can't remember their company name, but had everybody come into a Zoom meeting. It was a pre-recorded speech from the CEO. There was no video. It sounded quite robotic. And then basically after that ended, an email was triggered with everybody saying, we're confirming you're laid off. Here's your papers. Here's your date. So like, that would be the worst example of like, there's no human approach. You did like basically the coward's way out to not take any accountability or talk about what went wrong and show that you're a human and things happen. And sometimes no matter how well you plan, the outcome is a layoff.
Yeah.
And unfortunately the bear market of the past year or almost year now is a great example of that. Of a lot of leaders didn't know how long it was going to last. Like, is this going to be a tough couple of months, maybe 2 quarters? And now people are like, okay, I think this is going into the end of this year. So we have some tough decisions to make. Are we, what are we going to keep doing? What are we going to stop doing? And then also I've been in those, I'll call them war rooms for lack of a better room, where you have an Excel spreadsheet up and you're looking at a list, you're looking at teams, you're looking at compensation levels and what you need to cut to break even or hold down the fort so that you still have a business to run in 2 months or a year from now. And it's heartbreaking. It's not fun. Everybody's staring and like feeling that roller coaster of emotion before it's even happened. So from the perspective of when you've decided to make that layoff, it has to happen quickly, because whether we like to admit it or not, people wear their emotions on their sleeves. You can sense that energy change in the office or in virtual meetings. And, why are they executives all meeting, every day for long periods of time? So you want to get it out there very quickly so you don't have that tornado effect that leads to the dominoes of teams or people, already resigning out of fear, even though they don't know if they're going to be kept at the end of the day or not. Sure. So the biggest kind of pieces I think that's super important is to keep engagement with the people you're going to be keeping and really providing strong communication around the why. Mm-hmm. So, the approach is going to change depending on the size of your company. Are you 50 people? Are you 200? Are you 10,000? You need to cater it. And I think when you have a growth focused company, generally you've hired quite quickly. you could have a really strong corporate culture that's been based on like quick moving success, awesome events. Then all of a sudden you're going to basically rip it apart. And then, okay, like, do you have a standing team of 10, 15? So I think showing the emotion and having the honesty and like, here's what's happening. Here's what we're going to do. Here are the teams that are affected. Here's why. Here's what we've learned by going through this process, and being really, I think, accountable in terms of seeing the mistakes that were made, or just also saying we had no idea this was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't plan, like you can't plan for a bear market. You can do your best to kind of pattern around it if it's very clear it's going to happen, but you don't know the scale and how it's going to be affected. So I think showcasing the humanness behind a company is really important, because people can understand that.
Well, of course, and you are affecting human beings' lives. One thing I would challenge is, I think companies are quick, not all companies, but a lot of companies are super quick to cut.
Mhm.
So we have this trend happening globally, especially in the tech industry. It's okay, we got to cut people, right? And my own personal experiences, running different businesses, that was always the last thing I would look at.
Yeah.
And so challenging organizations to even challenge their people on what expenses can be cut.
Yeah.
If I go back in history, and I think about like 9/11, our US parent company came to me and said, hey, you got to cut 11 people out of your corporate office. And I'm like, there's no way that I can't cut 11 people out. What do you need financially?
Mhm.
And that was a great experience for our company, because we were able to sort of peel the onion back and look at where are we spending money? Like, we need to get X amount of dollars. Where are we spending money that we can really cut expense and rethink how we are doing the work we're doing in
Mhm.
order to save the people that, that are part of our organization. So I throw that out there because I think that's such an important aspect of not getting caught in the cycle, because sometimes it is a cycle.
And you'll see that in like the larger organizations too, of like tech. And one thing that I don't think people were as transparent about it. A lot of those larger tech companies hired all the people because they wanted to keep them for themselves, so no other company could get that talent. And then when it's time for cut, then they're like, okay, well, you have a bunch of redundant roles and people, which again is not a very great human approach to building a company and building a really strong team. And kind of coming back to sort of that clarity and communication, if you're talking to the team like, hey, we're coming up against financial challenges, what we're going to be doing right now is reviewing the budget, and we're going to cut everything we don't need and sort of that bare bones structure, because we're trying to save, this dollar amount. And if people understand that, then you have an opportunity to unite people around problem solving. Like,
Sure.
okay, well, I could take on this different hat. Could we look at doing this different in a way? And then, sometimes outside of that, then generally people are like, okay, well, if we don't turn this around, now we know we've done everything we can. And now it is
Time.
have to get rid of salaries. And then people at least are kind of engaged and have seen the commitment to making it happen without just right away, well, I'm not, like, as a CEO, I'm not going to cut my salary, or I'm not going to put in money to cover payroll. If people have seen all those things happen, you can't deny the truth that it's just a tough decision, but you understand why everybody kind of came together to make it.
Yeah, exactly. And so the key there is being part of the process.
Yeah.
Being part of that decision making, because like I was on a call with some people yesterday, and company's highly profitable and they laid off like 1,000 people. And, so you go, okay, but you're highly profitable. So let's really look at that. Is it because you're caught up in the cycle and the stories of what's going through the media right now? Right. And so I think there's we have to be careful that, going back to our original conversation about that human-centric approach, and really looking at what is that ripple effect.
Yeah.
So if you get caught up, let's say, in that layoff, what can individuals do? Because the first thing is, even going back to your own story, that self-doubt comes in. We start comparing ourselves. Why did this person get laid off and I did, or why did I get laid off and this person didn't? What would be your words of wisdom to individuals that get caught up in that cycle?
Yeah, I think, you know, if you get brought into that office for that conversation, I think recognizing that it's a little bit of shock. Again, it depends on whether it's coming to as a surprise to you or not.
Yeah.
So we'll just say it's come as a surprise, and you didn't think, you know, you're going to be on that chopping block, or you didn't realize how bad it was. I think taking a beat, taking, you know, that paperwork, saying, okay, I just need some time to digest this. Can I come back and, you know, ask some questions? I think that space is really important,
Mm.
because you need to be able to feel those feelings of what just happened. Oh my goodness, you know, digest. Do I have a severance package that's going to allow me a decent amount of time to get a new job? Do I need to hit the gas pedal right away and jump into applying, and kind of being aware, like, of panic mode, and then kind of being able to be proactive. So I think taking time to gather your thoughts, feel your feelings is really important, and then start to kind of pull together what questions you have. You've had a chance now to look at the documents, understand, you know, what support's going to be offered for you as you transition out of this. And I think it gives people an opportunity to be really proactive in that circumstance and be really professional versus being really reactionary and emotional, because it's a small world. You never know when you're going to cross paths with somebody again, or who's going to be your biggest advocate for your next role. So I think being able to recognize it's a really unfortunate situation for everybody involved, from the person who has to have that conversation with you to being on the receiving end of it. Um, but I think most people are genuinely want to help people. So taking the time, getting all the things you need to get done, and then taking support if it's offered, or, you know, being able to ask those questions like, you know, do you know anybody in this industry that's hiring, or can you make a recommendation for me? I think all those pieces come to being able to handle your next adventure in a good way versus carrying any kind of resentment and bitterness into that next company and role. Because I've seen it where, you know, interviewing people and you're like, talk to me about what happened in that last role. It's like, I was laid off, and they go off and you're like, okay, so, you know, how are you feeling about
Not
that
good.
now? You know, or like they have, you know, they light up their boss about however it was handled versus saying, you know, this is what happened.
Hmm.
I really, like, it was really tough. I loved that job. I loved that company. It sucks, but I've taken the time. I'm ready now. And here's what I'm looking for. And here's what's really important to me going forward.
Yeah.
And then that stands out as somebody who's really taken the time to kind of, as I always say, do the work versus just rapid fire on applications, and everything is, again, more of that reactionary perspective. And it comes through in interviews really quick.
Yeah, it does. It does. That's really good advice. I mean, you know, a couple of things I'll add to that is it's normal to feel emotional,
Yeah,
right? Because your whole world just got rocked.
100%.
But if you can slow it down and take that pause and look at what the possibilities can be for you, that will help you get back into the swing of things more quickly.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. Like, I mean, the normal human reaction is to react versus respond to the situation. Not easy. Like, it's hard to hear that, you know, hey, you're being laid off, and this is what's happening with the business. And those are, you know, not fun conversations to, you know, to have to hear. But there is life after. I think that's the important thing. And if you can make that switch from, oh my gosh, why me, not her or him, to, oh my gosh, you know what? I've always wanted to try this, or, you know, hey, this company's been courting me for quite some time. Maybe it's time I go and talk to them. That will help you, to your point, get back on your feet quickly.
Yeah. And a good mentor of mine, she has a wild story herself, but her big thing was always power over pity. And I think that,
That's nice.
again, that reframing of why is this happening to me? Why me? And of course, I always say, like, that rule, give yourself, you know, that 2 to 3 days to feel sad. If you want to go eat ice cream and just kind of like be in it, that's okay. Like, process it. And I think, again, it comes to that company culture. Has it been normalized that working with counselors and therapists on the regular, regardless of if something's happening to you, is something that has been recommended? So, like, hey, we've got these people that, you know, we've reached out to that have available slots for everybody, you know, that's been affected by this layoff, staying or not, to go just talk to somebody. And having somebody to be able to hold space for you vent, get out all the things you want to get out, and then help process it and give you tools so that the next thing you're like, I'm ready for this. I'm so excited. Like I get a chance to do something different. And then so many people have ended up in like the best next role of their life, or it took them a whole other path, right? So you're just like, yeah, it sucks, but like it could be so great also.
Yeah, it truly can. I mean, and it's perspective, right? It's what your perspective is. And, you know, because I am a coach, I'm going to say getting a coach is probably one of the best things you can do, even while you're in it, because it really helps you start to explore and uncover those things that, you know, what are your superpowers? What are you really good at? And what do you love doing? And then how do you translate that? You know, that's just such an important journey to take regardless.
Well, it's
Yeah.
that shared struggle too that helps us connect, right? Like when massive events happen in our life, it's who do we go to? And then somebody else opens up. So regardless of whether it's, you know, that work thing, it's being able to just share that, and it makes you way more resilient and adaptable in the next role. And hey, had I known this, I could have taken on this role or expand your skill set. There's just so many valuable things that can come out of, we'll call them unfortunate situations.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. And again, it's perspective, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just cognizant of our time, and I'd like to maybe just take a moment and let you think about, or let you share with our audience, what would be one thing that you would want them to walk away with today that, you know, can help support, or, you know, just help them get more clarity around if they were facing, or if they are facing a layoff, or if they've just been laid off.
Yeah, I think there's kind of, you know, two pieces. There might be people listening who are the ones delivering those news. And so my one big like thing I would say is be transparent and be vulnerable. Showing emotion is a good thing. Being teary-eyed while talking to people and feeling those feelings with them, and like Simon Sinek says, being in the mud with them, that's super powerful. And so if you can take the time to get those tools before you go into those conversations to be a really strong leader for those people, that will have a ripple effect that I don't think they'll even know, like throughout their lifetime. So I think that's really important. From the, you know, employee perspective of being on the end of that, first, just breathe. It's a jar to the system, and then we stop breathing and our whole body tenses up and we go into panic mode, and that's okay. But I think taking the time and, you know, who is that quarterback, who is that support person that's going to help you work through that so that you can approach things and take it and move into a growth perspective. You know, we live in a world where if we talk about like tech and access, you can find videos, you can find different coaches and leaders will give you some great talks about that. But I think that asking for help is the most powerful thing you can do. And whether that is a therapist, a counselor, whether it's transition support to get you ready for your next role, from interview prep, resume review, all those things.
Confidence.
Yeah. And it always gets tested. So I think it's always a journey. And I don't think anybody can ever say, I've made it, or this is as good as it gets for me. It is, doing the work never ends.
Yeah.
It's constant.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you don't know what's going to be thrown at you at any given point in time. So it is that constant evolvement. Yeah. Great suggestions. And, you know, it is hard when you're on the side of having to give that news. Like that's really difficult. And so those that are going through layoffs know that it's not something somebody wants to do. Unfortunately, it's a circumstance of oftentimes where they have to do it. But to your point, I think, you know, being in that space and holding space and being vulnerable is super important. And knowing you'll come out okay on the other end.
Yeah.
That's really important. Yeah.
Yeah. It's that human connection piece is what everybody's looking for, right? Regardless of the company, like that's all people want, to know that it's not, you know, just them, that there's shared struggle and that there's a pathway forward at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Wow. Jenna, great feedback. You know, I know we want to talk about other things, and that's okay. We'll just have to do it again. I really appreciate you, you know, being so open and, really sharing some of the challenges that happen when we deal with layoffs and these changes. And you've said a lot of things, like even about the choices we make and having that awareness, like that is so important, because if you're not aware of how you're feeling, showing up, all those things, how do you make changes, right? And that's part of the evolvement. And things are moving quick, right? And so we can't control anything outside of us, only us. And so it's knowing yourself and knowing what you need to be able to be successful and to be whole.
Yeah. And that's the power, right? And I think people get so caught up, and I'm like, you have a choice. You're in a situation where you can like do those things. I'm like, and I know that if I had to go do them, I'm like, okay, I'd have to maybe go back to bartending, but I would be happier if I had to go do this while I figure things out. And making people aware and recognizing they have the power of choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah, no, it is indeed. Indeed. Actually, so I do a course called Choiceology
I love it.
for that reason, because we often think that we have to do other people's bidding. And no, you don't. You have a choice. You can choose how you wake up and see what the day, if it's raining, you can say, oh, it's raining, it's gray, it's this, or you can wake up and say, oh, that's going to bring great flowers in, just a couple of weeks, or my grass is going to grow, or whatever. Like It is a choice that we have.
And I think too, like one statement that I always tell people, like, it's not win lose, it's win learn. And if you take the loss out of it, and it's, what is this teaching me? What can I learn from this? What can I take forward? You put yourself back in the driver's seat.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. Love that. That's a great motto. Put that on your computer, everybody. Win, learn, win, learn. I love it. That's awesome. Jenna, thank you. This has been terrific. Really, really enjoyed having you on the show today. And I'm sure our audience has lots of questions. So how can they connect with you?
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram and send me messages. You can find me on LinkedIn, check out my website. They can email me directly, whatever works. I'm pretty approachable.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. I'm super grateful to you. And I want to take a moment and thank our audience for being here. And listen, if you're interested in figuring out, what is your leadership story? We have a free leadership quiz on our website at WIL Empowered. That's 1L, WIL Empowered. And feel free to go on, take your quiz. Let us know. How does that turn out for you? What does it tell you about your leadership style? And thank you. I know you have a choice. I appreciate you being here today and taking time to listen to Jenna's story and her tips that she shared. It's been super awesome. And Jenna, we look forward to seeing you again on one of our WIL Talk podcasts.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Our pleasure. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time. Take care.